Hey, good afternoon and welcome to Trail Talk. You just think I'm up here by myself. Really, I'm not. Or won't be in just a second. Mary's behind the camera. She's doing double duty today, but we're so glad you could join us on this lovely Wednesday in February. When does February have lovely weather? Oh, well, 2024, I guess. But welcome. We are going to take a look at Oklahoma State Symbols and Emblems, the American Bison today. Now, looking back, we've done a few trail talks that covered
different symbols and things.
Yeah, well, and
Or
different
just the bison.
bison stories.
Right.
We've taught about just bison in general. We've talked about Native Americans and bison. We talked about when under Teddy Roosevelt, the bison were brought from the Bronx Zoo to the Wichita Mountains, all of that. So we're just going to kind of get started and we're just going to kind of put all of those things together in one lesson. Yes, exactly. And so we're live at the Chisholm Trail Heritage Center in Duncan, Oklahoma, and we hope you are glad you tuned in.
That's right.
When it's over. We hope you're still feeling that way.
Yeah, we hope you're here at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Don't go anywhere. So let's just start it off. The American bison is the Oklahoma state animal, and it was adopted in 1972. And the quote that goes along with I guess it's like the
mantra?
Well, something they do, in the House or Senate. It's it's an official whatever bill. I don't know that it's a bill or whatever, but the quote was, "The magnificent animal was native to both the grasslands and the woodlands of what is now Oklahoma, and was significant in the cultures and ceremonies of many of the Indian tribes who lived in Oklahoma and have passed along their heritage to modern day Oklahomans." So there you go. They wanted to ensure that we knew it was about Oklahoma. They used the word 3 times in that sentence.
Just in case you were unaware.
Yeah, just in case. We have talked before about, well, first of all, the word bison is like the science, the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and the bison family. And American bison is actually bison. That's the official.
For some reason I think of pizza when you say
That's
I don't
funny.
know why, but that's where my mind went.
But people often refer to this animal as a buffalo.
Yes, and several times throughout the studies here it says that's wrong.
That absolutely, it's wrong. Buffalo is like a word that refers to an animal known probably in European countries or African countries, or found by Europeans maybe much earlier than they encountered
the bison.
But the animal is, like a water buffalo. A water buffalo have large horns and they're big bodied animals and everything, but they're not the same. And then it was kind of different because the Spanish, the English, the French, they were all meandering through what's now the United States at different times. They encountered these animals. They kind of gave their own name,
how they classified or
called it something. And so all of those words, kind of hover around bison, buffalo, and everything. But the Sioux had the best name, the Tatanka. And that name.
You ever seen Dances with Wolves?
Exactly. The Sioux people called these animals Tatanka, and it is when I hear that name, it makes me think of a fierce, strong, and Tatanka
makes me think of something stomping.
Yes.
It almost has that sound to it when you say that name.
Like you can hear them running. Yeah, and I mean, who knows what the
correlation
is, but that's what I think of. The herds once roamed North America between the Appalachian Mountains and the Rockies, which essentially would make Oklahoma home. And when you go narrow that down to where the Great Plains are, just a little bit further west of the Appalachians, then you kind of have the Great Plains, which we've got a map we're gonna look at. But something I read, so in the late 1800s, the bison were threatened with extinction. The estimated 40 million bison dwindled in almost that
Yeah,
fast.
blink of an eye almost.
Yeah, to fewer than 1,000.
Can you
Some
believe
say
it?
fewer than 500.
I mean, that's just massive numbers.
Yeah, and so there was a way for people to think about it that I came across.
Perspective.
It said, imagine you're in New York City, you and the 20 million people that live there.
Okay.
And then just a few years later, you go back to New York City and there's less than 1,000 people there. That really helped me picture it, because any large city with millions of people, I mean, you imagine what it sounds like, you imagine what it looks like.
Congestion.
If you've never been there, you see it on TV or maybe, you know, shoulder to shoulder,
Right.
just people
Waiting
everywhere.
Crosswalks and
Exactly.
traffic everywhere.
Yes, and then it's less than 1,000 people. That would be, I mean, honestly,
it's kind of heartbreaking when you think of it. I mean,
it is. It really is, and that's half the number of buffalo they estimated were in the Great Plains at one time. It's just, man, it's so overwhelming.
And just for the purpose of their heights.
Yes,
it was the massive reason, or the major reason of that.
The major reason. And a few summers ago, we had a traveling exhibit that was all about the bison, which I loved that exhibit so much. I learned so much. But they had the well, before we skip to that, so I wanted to give you a picture here of the Great Plains. Here's the Mississippi. So the Appalachians are more, you know, over here toward the East Coast. But this Great Plains area, this is where the bison lived, and this is where the Native American Plains tribes lived, and they followed
those herds.
They followed those herds. They followed them so far, and then they would come back. And there were multiple herds, and those herds were they were big enough, and they would mix in enough to keep any kind of an inbred kind of situation, which would produce animals that were not healthy.
Right. Not sustainable for them.
Right, yes, sustainable. That's a good word. Anyway, I found this picture.
My goodness.
Of this was like 1872. Yeah, these bison are just packed into this valley. You can see these high spots on either side. And
whoa.
Yeah.
You can't even see, I mean, it's just,
yeah. And this was,
and you may not be able to see it on camera, but it's just everywhere that's dark. That's bison.
Yeah, those are bison as far as the eye can see. And I was so impressed with this. Anyway, this is a picture of the herds, you know, that these
once were.
Right. And, you know, the Native Americans were prolific as far as the number of people that were living out there. And they hunted and followed these herds around, because these herds
that was their
life. It was life to them.
And they didn't kill, even though that's what they lived off of, and they followed them for that purpose of living. They were still able to survive and thrive. The bison were. They weren't killing and just for the sport of it, because they could have. There was thousands of them there for the taking.
Right.
You know,
but they only killed as many as they needed, and they used every part of the animal, and they learned how to preserve those things on the animals that could spoil, and knew what to do to, I mean, everything. We used to teach that around here. We have a buffalo bladder, believe it or not.
We do.
And those bladders were taken from the animal, drained, and then immediately air would be blown into them, so the sides didn't ever stick together. And with that air in them, they were able to make kind of a balloon looking thing that's rigid. And they would use that as a water container. I mean,
things you would not think of, that they were able to think of.
Yeah. they saw the bones as tools.
Tools, weapons.
Right,
I mean,
whatever they needed
yes.
them for, they used them, and they used the hide, they used they used the muscle,
Toes.
they used the tendons, they used the hooves, they used
Mhm.
everything. I mean, it's an amazing feat, I think, to consider how conservation minded
They were.
they were.
It was almost like they put them up on a pedestal. They
True.
were not going to kill unless they could use every bit and every piece of it, because
Mhm.
they did. They methodically thought through the process of taking that animal's life.
Right, yes, and they did. Native Americans are so close, their cultures,
Nature already.
yes, nature and animal life and
Mhm.
plant life and everything is so respected and honored. And
Honored, yeah.
yeah, the bison is one that they hold in the highest esteem. And so when the killing started, we have this iconic picture. I feel like you've probably seen this. If this is your first time to see it, be overwhelmed, because I can remember the first time I saw it was actually with that
The exhibit.
And so this represents, I don't know, millions of, these are bison skulls. You can see this guy at the top, he's holding one.
Proudly. And he's
Yeah.
standing on one.
Yeah. So the slaughter began when traders realized that there was money to be
value
made.
yeah.
And so these European settlers had rifles. They had, the Native Americans were hunting with bow and arrow. And so they could shoot from miles away, and they could just get a high spot and just
Take
shoot
them off.
as many as they could.
Mhm.
And then they would take the pelt off, the robe, the buffalo robes. They were very valuable, and people paid a lot of money for them. And so money was the source of their motivation to kill these bison. Now,
Leaving the carcass.
because I like to think the best in people, I'm thinking surely they did not intend to go as far as they did. But in retrospect,
in every group, there's those bad seeds.
Yeah. In retrospect, they were being encouraged, and then there was also the westward expansion,
People coming in.
encouraging the European settlers to move west across the United States. I'm going to go back to that map, a couple of slides. So, moving westward, and their railroads came through. And the Transcontinental Railroad split the Great Plains in half. And so that created two herds of bison. And when the two herds were there, reproduction became more limited. And it split for the Native Americans on hunting grounds.
Right.
Also.
Right.
And then you also have the fact that our government encouraged killing off the bison because it was the Native American livelihood. They knew it would make them more vulnerable
and more needy for
help.
Assistance.
And so then they would turn to the government to help them. And soon they were living on reservations in what is now Oklahoma. Not a pretty side of our state's history, and yet a very significant part of the story. But I always remember from that exhibit too, that the bones were shipped to European China production companies because bone China. Did you ever stop and think that it was made from some kind of animal bone? And bison bone was very highly sought after as one of the, yeah. And so they shipped a lot of the bones off too. And so all the valuable meat that fed, thousands and thousands of Native Americans, was just rotting.
There to
and
spoil.
yeah. So in 1905, the American Bison Society formed in New York at the Bronx Zoo to begin efforts to reverse this impending extinction. And Theodore Roosevelt was president of the United States in 1905. And then in 1907, but he was a big conservationist. He very much,
Right.
established so many national parks and so many things like that. But in 1907, the year of our statehood, the American Bison Society shipped 15 bison from the Bronx Zoo to the Wichita Mountains. And so they could only ship them by train as far as Cache. And they still had to go 13 miles to get to, you remember this story? And so they had these little crate things on wheels, and they loaded one bison in each of these and to take them out to the wildlife refuge.
Those movies whenever you see a traveling circus.
Yes, exactly, with their animals in there. But you can see it had, everyone was at two teams, a double team of, it looks like mules.
I was gonna say, yeah, mules.
Pulling those wagons filled with a 1,000 pound
Not more.
bison.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, one of the early conservation efforts brought the bison back home to Oklahoma and to the Wichita Mountains, which is a grassland and a woodland.
Right.
And so put them back in their natural habitat with an opportunity to thrive.
It was the first animal reintroduction in North America as well.
Oh, yeah, yes.
There in 1907.
Yeah, so, amazing that they're brought back home, that Oklahoma gets to be the place where all of this starts. And, anyway, one of my favorite parts of the story actually is that the bison came back home. So, when you look at bison, the male of the species is just bigger. He is bigger than the female, and he might weigh almost 2,000 pounds, where the female would weigh maybe 1,200 pounds. So that's a pretty
big difference.
Yeah.
And their horns are different. The male horns will grow longer as the females will.
Right. And even though she has some pretty good sized horns here, you can tell her face is more
thinner.
Yeah, and more cow-like, I think. If you're
Right.
looking straight onto it, it looks more like a bovine, a cow.
Right.
And even though the female is a cow, I'm
That's
referring to
that's
like
their name.
a bovine, but you can see he's got that furry, big hump on his face.
And the male won't lose their horns either.
Right. Like male deer, they grow horns and lose them every year. And the bison horn, and like you said, you can kind of judge age if they're by the length of their their horns. So and then the calf is red.
That just looks like a little baby cow.
It does. It's just so cute. So cute. But you can see the back
How it's starting
right
to form there.
which is, one of their
Traits or
yes.
one of their main characteristics.
That big muscle through there. If this was a bovine cattle, this little guy's body would be much more slender through here.
Right.
Now, but a nickname for these calves is a red dog. That's what but as they grow older, I loved this picture because for perspective of how big
the mom is.
Because you can tell by the
Even the
lump
face.
there.
Look how much bigger that face is.
Yeah.
The head.
So he's got a long way to go. But that's a cute little baby there. So this is a bison in the summer months, and I think this is this is something that happens to them. If you see a bison that looks like this, he's not sick.
Yeah.
He
there's
doesn't
nothing
have
wrong.
like mange or
Right,
whatever.
right. It's something that naturally happens.
Yeah, this is him shedding this heavy winter
Can you
coat.
imagine carrying all that in the winter or in the summer around
Yeah.
here?
Yeah, it is, it's a lot. And so he's just shedding all of that, for the summer months as he cools down. And then here's a picture of a guy covered for the winter months.
Have it growing back in there.
This was the best picture, even though obviously this guy is in a zoo somewhere. He is not in the wild.
Right,
And he's pretty young. Look how small his horns are.
right.
But still, you see the giant body. This
Coverage.
is a perfect, I mean, look at that massive shoulder muscle up
And
there.
the things they can do is just.
Yeah, their shoulder blades are
The
so,
bones,
they are
that exhibit
massive.
had those bones in there, huge.
Yeah. So anyway, in the wintertime, they're covered like this. And again, if you see one shedding, it's just,
Yeah.
he's just
Don't be
adjusting.
alarmed.
Yeah, he's adjusting to the temperature.
Look at it,
So-
looks like it's just.
Yeah.
Like it's just safe.
So, these bison can jump as high as 6 feet, even
Vertically.
though I could not find a good picture of one jumping.
To
I've
see her
heard-
do that would be amazing.
I know, like
Can you imagine 2,000 pounds
higher,
just?
higher than my head. I can't, but
And that
that,
muscle helps them do that.
yes, and you can't, I mean, just imagine how strong their legs are to be able to launch
Just, yeah,
2,000 pounds up.
vertical. I mean, just.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I thought this was great because obviously this guy had already
Just made it
cleared the
over, right.
fence. This one is in the process of
Mhm,
jumping
mhm.
the fence. And just for the record, there are several 100,000 bison now,
Right,
either on like on a wildlife refuge or,
reserve type.
Yellowstone,
Right,
places
some kind of
like
area
that.
where they're kind of protected.
And on ranches,
Mhm.
like the 101 Ranch is a place where bison live and I mean, you can go to restaurants and order bison burger or
Right.
bison whatever.
There's the Shawnee or the Pawnee Bill Ranch near Pawnee.
Uh-huh.
So there's that. And then of course the Wichita Wildlife,
Mhm.
things like
Yes,
that.
yes. Here is a super cool picture of a bison running,
That
this
muscle.
says in the desert, yeah. So here, obviously, desert,
Summer.
it's hot, but these muscles, they can run 40 miles an hour, which is, I saw on the news this morning, somewhere a horse had gotten out of like a riding, thing, and it was running down the highway. It was in the middle by the little low stone, cement barrier things. And there was someone riding alongside recording this horse, and the horse was running about 40 miles an hour, which I think is like 1 horsepower. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and so a bison can run this as fast as a horse. Right? I mean, that's, if you kind of put it in your head like that, it's like, holy cow.
Yeah, 40 miles an hour and charging that fast. too.
Yes, and they can almost stop on a dime and whip around and go another
Short turn,
direction.
Exactly.
They are just,
It's very agile.
yeah, they can swim.
Imagine 2,000 pounds just
Yeah.
swimming, cannonball.
Right? All the water's gone. All the water's gone, man. Yeah. Okay, so
That's like my dog.
not cannonball, but
They're wallowing.
so yeah, they're wallowing. So this is the way bison clean themselves, is by rolling around in the dirt. And out at the Wichita
Sounds
Mountains,
counterproductive.
right? At the Wichita Mountains, this is something that you can find is a buffalo wallow, and it will just be a very large area where the grass is gone,
Depression.
and yeah, there's a depression where they get down in there, and what they're doing is they're getting the dirt in their fur, and it loosens up things that
Whatever's
are
in there.
dirty or stuck, whatever's in that.
Mhm.
And then they get up and shake off really hard, and it loosens, it
kinda
blows
like-
it up.
It's kind of like a scrub.
Yes,
It's
yeah,
kind of like their dirt scrub.
Like a sugar scrub,
Right,
they're having a
right.
dirt scrub.
Exactly.
And so, anyway, they just wallow back and forth. You know how your dog will get out there in the
Mhm.
grass
Just
and do all
itch
that?
and
Yeah, that's what these guys are doing. Now, I also read that, these wallows that are left behind serve an ecosystem because if there's rain, then
It'll gather in there.
there'll be water that stands in that.
Mhm.
And then animals like birds who just don't use deep water for any reason, just a shallow area of
Mhm.
water, they can bathe and they can drink
Kind of
and
they go to your bird bath.
exactly, yeah. So, and this has
It's
been in
cycle
my
of
head,
life.
right? This has been in my head all day. We had a school here and we were talking about animals and I remembered something my sixth grade science teacher taught us. And he said, nature always seeks a balance. And one time he told us that he would accept that for almost any test answer.
Note
So
to
if you
self.
couldn't remember, nature always seeks a balance. So when you talk about ecosystems and habitats and things like that, that's what nature has done,
It's an amazing fact
right?
in the way that they do that.
And so it's balancing everything out. It seems like this bison is
Destroying
wallowing
the
out
land.
yes, and getting the grass
The
won't
roots,
grow
right.
and all that.
Mhm.
But there's a little water place then that
serves
is
another purpose.
exactly. And so it's awesome when you really think about it. So these giant majestic animals are creating a little space for a tiny bird.
Right. Something that they may not even know is even sitting on them.
Yeah,
They're so
and
tiny.
so they're just balancing each other out. It's so great. So believe it or not, bison have a pretty long lifespan.
Yes, 10 to 12 years or 10 to 20, I'm sorry.
10 to 20
In the
years.
wild, yeah.
They do not start producing, the cows don't start reproducing until they're about 2. But I mean, that gives them plenty of time to become physically large enough
to protect.
yeah. So there again, this is the picture the Oklahoma Historical Society uses on their page, and it's one of my favorites, just laying in the grass, the prairie grass that's out there, the clear blue skies. I mean,
Little fuzz top there.
Yeah, and it's hot.
Yep.
He's
You
shed
can tell
here.
the grass is all nice and dry.
Yeah. So in 2016, when President Obama was in office, he made the American bison the first national mammal of the United States. So
it's not just an Oklahoma thing now.
Yeah. I feel like it was a natural decision to select the bison as part of our Oklahoma state symbol list. I feel like to not do that would have been an oversight.
Oh, for sure.
But to make the bison a national symbol, I think is equally important.
Treasured throughout the U.S.
Exactly. And just the role it played in so many parts of history here.
The importance of it.
Yes, and I wish I could have seen a million of them. I wish I could have seen a million.
Just heard that noise.
Yes, felt. I'm sure the ground.
It had to.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just, it's really something. So, anyway, that's kind of the lesson that I hope you, appreciate the bison. If you're nearby, if you live in Oklahoma, you're close enough to make a day trip. We talked about this before. A vacay destination day trip to the Wichita Mountains. It's free to go in there. There is hiking, you can camp, you can drive to the top of Mount Scott, you can hike to the top of Mount Scott, you can rock climb. You can go to the Holy City, you can go eat at Mears or the old plantation at Medicine Park. I mean,
so many things to do.
So many things to do, but I encourage you, if you have never seen a bison in the wild, go to the Wichita Mountains and drive around.
You'll see their majesty.
Yes, you'll see them up on a bluff. You'll see them walking in the grass close by the road. I mean, they could be anywhere. And so I just want to encourage you for real to go see a bison out. Take your kids, take your grandkids, just go experience that and realize why this amazing animal is one of Oklahoma's state symbols. I think it'd be worth your drive. And you know what? If you have before, go do it again.
Yeah,
You can never get enough of
that's
them.
right.
Yeah.
See something new probably every time you go.
Exactly. Well, that's all the lesson that we have today. Thanks for watching. Tomorrow, Dakota Cass, who is the director of the Duncan campus of Cameron University, is going to join us, and she's going to talk about all the things the university has to offer here in Duncan and kind of things that you can experience on campus and what she's doing. She's been there since June and
A newcomer to the.
yeah, so she's still kind of
campus.
new to the job. So you don't want to miss that episode as we get to know her a little better and Cameron University in Duncan. So again, thanks for watching today, guys. We will see you next time. Happy
Happy trails.
trails.